right before the meeting starts.
Yes.
All right, I am told it is 6 o'clock and we are live, so I'd like to call us to order in accordance with South Carolina Code of Laws, 1985, Section 30-4-80-E. The following have been notified of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting: the Herald, the Charlotte Observer, CN2, and WRHI. Welcome, everyone. If you would please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. We'll now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. You've all received a copy of the agenda. Were there any adjustments or corrections? No. All right, it is fairly short and sweet. We actually discussed canceling, but had a couple things that needed to share or discuss. So that will stand as approved. Ms. Pettis, are there any cards for public participation? All right, no public participation today. Then we'll jump right into our couple of staff reports, starting with the review of the district report card, and Dr. Wakesness and Matt Roaring.
And also Renee is going to join us as well. All right, so good evening. We are here to talk about our 2022 school and district report card. And before we get into the details, I wanted to start with this slide because I think it shows a great overall view of what we are doing, the student outcomes that we are getting in our school district. So the State Department of Education and the federal government has never called me to ask my opinion on the accountability model. But if they ever do, I think these four indicators right here would tell the story of what we should do as a school district. We take the students as they are when they come to us, and what happens at the end when they leave and go on to college or their career or into the military. So on this slide, a good overview, you see 53.6% of our kids come to us ready for kindergarten. They take an assessment within the first 45? Yes. 45 days when they come to us in kindergarten, and it determines if they are ready for kindergarten. And then you see...
That's before they've been touched by our wonderful teachers.
That's right. Yep. So right at the very beginning of their educational career. And then you see in the second grade on track for success, 67.8%. When we get to high school, there's various ways where a student can become college and or career ready. And we've talked about this number before. But 85.6% of our students are deemed college or career ready. And then you see our graduation rate, which you have not seen because it's been embargoed until a couple of days ago, at 96.6%, which is, in my career in education, I don't think I've ever seen a graduation rate that high in any district. I'm sure there might be a couple. I know there's not any in our state, but I think that is a great look at what we do from when we receive the students when they're 5 years old to when they leave us after they finish high school.
Do you know if these metrics are unique to South Carolina standards or are like the kindergarten readiness? Is that a national measurement or is that something specific to South Carolina?
Brian, can you put the slides back?
I'm sorry.
Went the wrong way. So do you want to talk about, a little bit more about kindergarten readiness?
Yes, it is. It's a national assessment for kindergartners as they come into school districts.
Okay, that's good to know that we're comparing, across the entire nation and not unique to something that South Carolina created. All right, thank you. Sorry, I'll let you go.
Question here for you. Am
Yes.
I able to ask a question?
Sure.
So, love the data. If you would, could you give us a peek under the hood between kindergarten readiness and second grade on track for success, kind of as best you can?
I think our teachers do a phenomenal job. I think the board and Dr. Epps has made a priority to have lower class sizes, especially at the early elementary, and I think that has a tremendous impact on what our teachers are able to do. And you hear me all the time talk about professional learning communities, and I've been around to just about every elementary school now to see them in action, and I'm just blown away at the collaboration of our teachers, and they're sharing information, they're sharing strategies, they're trying to figure out, the very best way for this individual child to be successful, and that goes back to our strategic plan with the collaboration and the professional learning community. So, I mean, it shows how they come to us, and that's actually a really high KRA percentage compared to other districts across the country. But it shows the success that we're having early on. So I think the small class sizes is a very big part of it, and the collaboration and the targeted focus that our teachers have on individual student needs.
Thank you.
All right, so the accountability purpose is on the screen. The express goal of the accountability system is to improve teaching and learning so all students are equipped for success. I think sometimes, I don't really hear it a lot as much anymore as I used to, but sometimes people think schools and districts are afraid of accountability and don't want to be held accountable. I don't really know where that comes from, because we've always had not always, for the past 15 plus years, we've had school report cards. It's reported to the public. We come to the board meetings and talk about it. So we are not shy about our success, and sometimes when things aren't perfect, because nothing's ever perfect, we use that data to figure out exactly how we are going to help each individual student and to progress in all the different areas. So that's the accountability purpose. I don't know if I agree with that 100%, because I think we would still do all these things that we're going to hear from, and all the strategies in our strategic plan, whether we had an accountability system or not.
Another question for you.
Yes.
So there are other tools that you could use in helping tell a story. Why this one?
I think, well, one, it's the state system, so we have to follow the accountability system. But I always talk about using data really for two purposes: to celebrate our successes, but also to hone in on where we need to focus our efforts to have continuous improvement. And I think that first slide that I showed, and I would try to go back to, but I'll mess it up, so I'm not going to. I do that every time. But I love showing that slide because it really shows the success we have with students as they progress through.
Thank you.
All right, so in accountability, there are two pieces of it, I guess. There's the state accountability and the federal accountability. And the federal accountability system kind of sets the rules, and then states have some flexibility in designing their systems around how they want to keep their schools accountable within the parameters that the federal government has set. So you see some of the things on the screen for the state law. Our schools receive ratings. They have not had that for the last couple of years with COVID, but they did receive ratings this year. Districts do not get a separate district rating. Of course, all the schools are part of our district, so we have those, but there's not a separate district rating. It's 100%, 100-point scale. Each indicator, and you're going to hear from Matt and Renee on that, receives a rating. The ratings must be excellent, good, average, below average, or unsatisfactory, and everything has to be online. The federal law up there, the federal law only says that we have to take into account ELA and math achievement for accountability purposes. The state adds science, so we have science, and then in the high schools, U.S. history, but that's something that the states have a choice to do. English language proficiency, which you're going to see we do a phenomenal job with for our EL students. Graduation rate has to be part of the accountability model. Academic progress is left to the state to decide how they want to measure academic progress. That's going to be changing next year. So how everything is calculated tonight is going to be not everything. A lot of what's calculated tonight will be different next year, but we have some time to prepare for that. And then we must report subgroup performance on all of our indicators. When the individual ratings are given, it has to be one of these five. So that is the same from state to state, and that's how our state has it set up. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Matt, and he's going to talk a little bit more in detail about the specific ratings.
Thank you. So we do have the overall ratings here, and I put some screenshots up here just so the public can see kind of how to maneuver around the state report card site. So in where the arrow is, that's going to be your overall ratings, and we just received these last Thursday because there was a little bit of a holdup. We usually get these on the embargoed site a month or two in advance, and in this case, it's only a couple days in advance. So we do have 17 schools that were rated excellent in the district and 3 good school ratings. There were no average schools. In the past, we've had a couple average schools, but this year we were able to get all excellent or good ratings throughout the whole district as our overall.
And average is not bad. for
Yes,
this-
and that was my next
means
point.
You did what you were supposed to do.
Yes. So average, and we definitely made that clear to principals too, because there were a few average ratings within the indicators. That means that you're on track for success, and you're on track for your students to meet that profile of the South Carolina graduate. So to be above average is really you're exceeding expectations as far as the
I was surprised
accountability model
when
goes.
I read this in preparation that good says exceeds, right? I mean,
Right.
excellent
Exactly.
says substantially exceeds, right? I mean, I wish they had called it exceeds instead of good.
Yes.
Average usually has a bad connotation, but
Right,
in this
right,
definition
that's what I mean.
that they're using,
Good
their words,
as opposed to
it means
exceeds.
where you should be.
Yes, and full transparency, we just, since we just received the overall ratings, there was an error that we encountered with one of the school ratings. So we are hoping that that good will turn into an excellent for one of our high schools. So we should have 18 excellent schools and 2 good school ratings.
Wow.
Hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we'll make that appeal and we'll have that go through. Moving along to academic achievement, that's going to be our first indicator there. This is where we measure our success in ELA and math. In grades 3 through 8, points are determined by students that meet, if they exceed, meet, or approaches, they get points. If they do not meet, they don't get any points for grades 3 through 8, SC Ready, ELA, and math. And then for high schools, it's based on the EOC exams in English 1 and Algebra 1. And they get points for A, B, C, or D. They get points based on their scores, basically. So this graduating cohort, which the EOCs are based on, this is really the first cohort that's going through that have scores going back to 2020 when assessments were canceled, basically because of COVID and school closures. So you'll see, especially in the preparing for success indicator, there were about 600 less biology exams taken because if you think about it, this graduating cohort was in 10th grade during that 2020 school year, and biology is the EOC that most 10th graders take. So biology scores, really all scores are affected a little bit, but we really did maintain pretty well going through from last report card to this report card as far as EOCs go. And you'll see there that all schools rated excellent or good in this indicator. The next indicator is preparing for success, and you can see that with that arrow there. This is based on science assessments. It used to be U.S. history and science, the U.S. history EOC, and actually before then even the SE Pass social studies for grades 3 through 8. But now it's just science. They've eliminated the social studies aspect to this. So grades 4 and 6 take SC Pass Science, and they get points kind of similar to the academic achievement indicator. They get points for exceeds, meets, and approaches. And then high school biology students get points for the A through D on their EOC in biology. And another excellent achievement here, continuing that tradition of excellence, we have all the schools rated excellent or good in this category as well. And then my favorite one is English Learners Progress. This one is very straightforward. It's probably the most straightforward of the indicators. Basically, it's if a school has a minimum of 20 students assessed on the access test, that's the English proficiency test in reading, writing, listening, and speaking. They are basically set up with a target score at the beginning of their career with us. And then if they meet that target score each year, or if they're monitored, they receive points and they're kind of counted towards our overall numerator as far as the ratings go. So this year we have 19 out of 20 schools that were rated on this indicator. We have one school that didn't meet that minimum of 20 students that were assessed, but all 19 schools were rated excellent, good, or average, and 15 of the 19 schools are rated excellent. And once again, we're by far and away the #1 school in the state in this indicator. And then our new one this year is school climate. If you'll remember in years past, I guess going back to 2019, when the last time that we had ratings, this was the student engagement survey that was given. That was really difficult to kind of maneuver and to get our students to show that they were engaged. We know that they're engaged, but it was hard to get them to show that on a survey. So what they've done is they've replaced that indicator with the state climate survey. And you can see this is also a bit confusing. These calculus type higher level math formulas are actually found in the accountability manual. So what they're doing is they're taking certain questions from the teacher and student surveys that are given in the spring of each year and giving them weightings to determine the overall school for scores or score for schools. So again, if you can help us out with those formulas, that'd be great. But this one, you know, we figured that we would do pretty well because we know that our students and teachers are, you know, our school climates are great, and you know, we really want to highlight that. So we tried to get as much participation as possible. The participation rate was supposed to be factored into the calculations. So our survey coordinators at each school did a great job of making sure that all students were surveyed, or as many students as we could, and our teachers, we tried to get the survey out in their hands as much as possible, and then they decided not to count the participation rate as part of the factor in calculations at the state level. But you can see I put that on there anyway because I was proud of the work that was done by our survey coordinators at the schools. And in this indicator, going through all those formulas, we still had all 20 schools receiving ratings of average or above in this indicator. So a really nice job. You know, just, you know, with school climate, school safety, there's a lot of different things that go into this. The perception of instructional leadership, there's many different questions that go into the weightings, and they're all weighted kind of differently. So we'll continue to find out a little bit more about how this is scored and make sure that we're doing a good job to keep up with this.
Who sets the targets? So I went back, so the definition of average is met the goal.
Right.
But how is the goal established?
So for each indicator, it's a little bit different. The Education Oversight Committee has a lot to do with the setting of different targets and things like that, and how many points are allotted for the different ratings and the scales and things like that.
And then it goes through that big formula that we don't understand.
It does. It does. So the accountability manual is about 75 to 100 pages. I know it pretty well, and I can explain it for the most part, but it's a lot to do with the Education Oversight Committee and their psychometricians that really have a lot to do with the ratings.
What was the timetable again on when these surveys were done? Which year are we?
This was just the spring of last year, so March and April of last year.
22.
Okay.
Yes. And this is the same climate survey that's given every year to teachers, students, and parents too. And you'll see in some of the other not rated reporting on the state report card, you'll see some parent survey information as well. And the next one is student progress, and I'm going to call up Renee to help with that.
Okay, so student progress is another one of the complicated calculations. So student progress is worth 35 points, and it's only for ELA and math, and it's how well our students improved, how much they grew over time, over 2 years. So it compares them, how much they grew compared to their peers in the state. And it's a value-added system, so their pre-test is their past 2 years, if they had 2 years of testing. If they only had one, we'll still use the one. And then it takes their post-test, which would be their most current year, which was spring of 2022, check to see how much they grew compared to people like them in the state, how they did on their pre-test, and determines how much they grew by a very complicated formula, very similar to the ones used for the survey. And it takes the growth of all students, so it takes your all student population, and then your lowest 20% of students. So there's points for the lowest 20%, points for all the students, and those two are averaged together. And that's how we get the points out of 35 for student progress. And this is for elementary and middle schools, and 14 of our 17 received average or above on this indicator, and it does not apply to high schools. So that is student progress.
How does it work if a student wasn't here 2 years ago,
They don't count. Or no, 2 years ago,
or 1 year ago, I guess?
1 year, they have to have 2 years of testing, at least two, like last year and the year before. And if they had the year before that, it's included, but if they had at least 2 years of testing, they're included. If not, they're not included.
So new students are not factored in
Correct.
at all?
Right. But if they had a state test, right, Matt? If they took the test in another school in our state and we have their SC Ready score, then yes. But if they came from out of state, then no.
Okay.
Good question.
So taking the average, you take the top performing 80 and the lower performing 20%.
Not the top performing 80, all students,
All students.
and then just the bottom
And
20%.
then just the 20. So you take everyone,
Uh-huh,
then you take the lowest performing 20, and you average those
yes.
to get to the score.
Yeah, you apply the complicated formula, give them points, apply the,
I don't think it's necessarily an average.
no, not an average, it's how much each group grew.
The growth the growth rate isn't average though, is what I heard. Or is it? Yes.
The two, the all and the 20% are averaged together. Is that the
Okay.
question?
Your tw- your
After you
20% are
calculate
counted
each group.
twice in-
Yes, that is correct. Yes, the 20% is counted twice.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Okay, any other questions about student progress? It is a complicated one.
So with student progress, let's say, for example, our students are at 90, just to make things easy. Let's say we're at 90 and we grew to 91.
Like a student got a 90
And
went to
then
91.
that student
Okay.
grew to 91. So
Right.
they only grew 1 point.
Right.
As opposed to a child somewhere else that started with a 50 and they went to 61. Now they have 11 more points.
Right.
So they're considered better because they have better growth.
Potentially. So that particular case, so the person who scored a 90 is compared to other students who scored a 90.
Okay.
So how much does a typical student
Who scores a 90?
who scores a
do
90,
they typically-
how much do they typically grow? Or how much did they grow compared to others like them in the state? And so that student who scored a 50 is being compared to other students that scored a
Scored at
50. Yeah.
Okay. So we're not being penalized for our students to start ahead.
Well, I don't know that we're not penalized, but I do think it is
Right.
harder to show growth in those students, yes. So I think that does
Right, because
present
you're
a
only
challenge
moving
for
one-
us,
One
yes.
point or 2 points compared
Right.
to somebody else who only knows 50% of what they're supposed to know.
Right.
And now they know 61, so yay
Right.
that they know 61, but in the same respect, they only know 61% of what they're supposed to know, whereas our students
Right.
know 91%.
Right.
And yet we're scored slightly lower because our growth is now
Yeah, that is, yes.
lower.
Yes, it is definitely harder to grow those students, and it will be reflected in the points if we don't grow even our top students.
Right.
So the new growth model will be a little bit different, and it might be a little more fair for those top students, but it's going to be a lot more challenging for our lower students. But that's not till next year. But yes, good question.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on student progress? Okay, graduation rate, whew, easy one. Graduation rate is very easy to score. It's only for our high schools, and it's worth 25 points. And it is calculated by the four-year cohort. So whoever started that ninth grade year, 4 years ago, how many of them actually graduated? So if they left us and we don't know where they went, they still count in our denominator. So it is a little difficult to remove them from the denominator, but they take the graduation rate and they convert it to points. And if you have a 90% graduation rate or higher, it is an excellent rating. And as you saw earlier, that Mike talked about, our graduation rate this year is 96.6. So all of our high schools received an excellent rating for graduation rate, which is wonderful. And we'd like to point out that even though the whole 25 points goes to our high schools, you don't just learn all the things you have to know to graduate high school in 4 years. It is a K-12 outcome. So all of our principals are contributing to the graduation rate, even though they don't get the points on their report card. So again, we want to emphasize that. And if you look at our numbers there, you'll see in 2019 we were at 95.4, which is still an excellent graduation rate, and we're all the way up to 96.6, getting even better than where we were. And as you can see, the state numbers were above the state. But Matt even went back to the oldest report card that's on file on the State Department website, which is 2008, and 96.6 is the highest we've been since 2008. So again, a tremendous success.
And this is specifically, a 4-year, right?
Yes,
'Cause
yes.
I know there used to be some
A
other.
5-year,
method
yeah.
That was a 5-year
Yes,
graduation.
yes,
Okay.
good point. And this is 4-year. If they graduate in the summer, it would still count. But if they're a 5-year graduate, it does not count.
So if you're in a transient area, which we seem to be, then you would get penalized, basically. You got kids that start but don't finish.
Right.
Not because they didn't graduate, but because they left and went somewhere
Right,
else.
but if we know where they went and we can account for where they went,
You
And we
can,
can take them out.
yes, but we have to show that they have left us and went to a different
conversely,
district.
we have kids come here in the 10th grade. Do they count? Or how do they count?
Do they count? I don't think they do.
They just start.
Yeah,
That's start and finish?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to say the national graduation rate is like 58%, or it's low. So,
I'm not sure what it is, but I know what our state number is, and I feel like
Right,
we're
so
higher than
that's
that,
what I'm
but
saying.
even the national rate is lower.
yes, significantly lower.
Yeah. Okay, any others on graduation rate? Okay, the next indicator is college and career readiness. And as you can see on the left-hand side, there are 4 ways to be college ready. That's a 20 on your ACT, 10/20 SAT, 3 on an AP exam, and a C average for 6 hours of dual credit. So that's the college ready side. The career ready side is a 31 on ASVAB, silver level on the career assessment, a CTE completer, and a national credential, not just CTE, the state-approved work-based learning program, or the SC employability credential for students with a disability is on the career side. And the rating is given for students who are college or career ready. So any one of those bullet items above would give points towards this rating. And all of our high schools got excellent rating on this indicator. And as a district, we were at 85.6 to be college or career ready. And just to look at all the indicators for this, even though the first column is the only one that is used for the points, they're all reported. So the first column is college or career ready, and you can see we're at 85.6, which is higher than we were before COVID in 2019. The last column is career ready, just career ready, and we're at 83.5, which again is higher than we were in 2019. The 2 middle ones, college ready, we're at 60.3, so not quite where we were before, but getting back up higher than we were last year. And same thing for college and career ready. Not quite surpassing where we were in 2019, but we are higher than last year. And then I'm going to give it back to Mike to wrap it up for us.
So on the screen, you see some of the celebration points that we did not talk about tonight, but that can be found in the school report cards. You see the first 2 slides were from that first graphic I showed you, the amount of our students, percentage of our students that are ready when they come to us. I think when people see that, they think that 53.6 would be really low, but actually compared to the state, it's high. So our students are coming to us at 53.6% ready for kindergarten, and you see how they progress through. The third bullet point I want to highlight is our CTE completers and our industry credentials. We have had an effort over the last few years to add CTE programs. The programs we've added at York Tech aren't reflected in these numbers, but those are CTE programs like the welding and the auto body collision. So I think it shows the efforts we've had to increase and give our students even more opportunities. The last 2 bottom points, we've talked about this, I feel like several times, that we're usually always ranked at the very top of the state when you look at traditional public schools and pretty much any metric. But then also, there's not a lot of national benchmarks that we can use because each state does it a little bit differently. But when we have the things we can compare, like SAT scores and AP scores, we are far exceeding the state and national averages. And you've seen this before, but I wanted to show it because it's on what we're talking about. But our AP scores, you can see how we far exceed the state and national average in just about all of them. I think there was 2 where we were a little bit lower, but just wonderful results that we're getting. Our SAT, you see us compared to the nation. You see how we've grown from the last year. And I want to end with this slide because this is the first one, and I'm so happy with this slide. But whenever I talk to principals and say, great job, I was talking to Dr. McQuay earlier, and I said, great job, her scores were really, really high. And the first thing she says is, well, it's because of the teachers and the staff at the school. I was talking to Mr. Allen about their growth rating. It was extreme improvement at their school. And the first thing he said was, well, it's the teachers, it's the staff. And I always have to remind them, but it's also them. It's their leadership, and they set the tone in their building. And I think similar to this, I also want to point out how the leadership of our superintendent and the board plays a role in this success as well. Because just like our principals create the conditions for our schools, you all create the conditions for the schools to be able to do that as well. So I think this goes to everybody, from the bus drivers to the custodians to the teachers, of course, the principals, the district leadership, and just really proud of our results. Any questions? Any other questions at this time?
I'll first start by saying there's so much to celebrate here, and really just kind of echoing what you just said. I know it's the hard work of what our teams are doing in the schools and the leadership here at the district office. I think this is, I've asked the same question for now my 6th straight year. When you look at these results, there are so many things to celebrate, but what are some of the things that you've identified as a district or even school by school? What are some of the things that you've pulled out that you know really we need to focus on as far as improving, whether that be with, different programs or a different programmatic approach? What are some of the things that you've identified that would be areas for improvement?
We want to keep growing in the CTE offerings that we have. Excuse me. So we have additional opportunities for our students to earn the career credentials that they need to be successful and to give them a leg up. We've added several programs over the last 3 or 4 years, like I mentioned, but I think continuing to focus on career type training for our students. The second thing I would say is time, which I know we can't just create. But going to all the schools and seeing their PLCs, they always run out of time. And I don't know how to fix that, but there's just never enough time to do all the planning that they need. So I think those are 2 of the big areas. I think as we continue to grow, I hope we're able to add more content coordinators. The work of our science and math coordinators and ELA at the elementary level has been phenomenal. And I think it just provides so much better service to our teachers to help them grapple with the new standards and to research different programs that may be out there. So those are a few off the top of my head.
Mike and I have been talking, and the curriculum staff, this board, past boards, and some of you were on it, Wayne in particular, we made such an emphasis on AP participation rate. We're one of the honor roll AP districts, like 8 out of 9.
I think like 10 out of 11 years.
We do want to make a push on dual credit. That's kind of our next little area we're going to try to improve in.
Right. Yeah, and we've added with USCL, I think there's 4 different kind of strands we have, but there's room for growth there just to give more options. Some students want to stick with AP, and some students may want the dual credit opportunity. There's lots of different paths to where they might want to go, so that is something else that we're looking at increasing as well.
And that was all in strategic plans.
Yes.
By past boards during those years.
Yep.
I know a couple months ago, you guys did some analysis on folks that had been here with us for multiple years versus those that had come to us more recently. I don't know if there's any way to slice and dice any of this, and whether there is or not, is there something transitional program-wise for new students when they come into their district into our district that if we know, this is the 53% at kindergarten, but what about the ones that come in at second grade, at second, that are not at 67.8% yet, right? Because we're so, to your point, so transient, so many people come in. I don't know if there's any way to benchmark at that point and then figure out what kind of gaps need to be filled. And maybe that's all through the same PLC processes anyway.
Right.
But
I think it is. I think when we get the students, we really look at all the data that they bring with us with Schoolzilla. I always want to put a plug in for that, but it really allows the schools and the school leadership to see the students' history. And then when they get in there with the teacher, and the teacher's able to see where they're struggling, where they're performing very well, they're able to start filling those gaps. It always does present a challenge when somebody comes in new, just because it's, systems are different from place to place, not necessarily anything good or bad, it's just different. So that does provide a challenge, but I think just through our regular PLC process and data process, it helps with that.
That's one of the things that have always amazed me, that we have been able to maintain or improve our overall performance while we deal with a lot of transitional
And the
students coming in that, we didn't have them from the beginning, but we're able to lift them up as well.
Certainly, yeah. And just the sheer growth, even if they come in and they're here with us on the first day of school, just the growth puts so much pressure points on the schools. It's really amazing that they're able to continue with the excellence.
Great job.
other questions? Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
And then next up, we've got some exciting news about a school violence prevention program. Mr. Todd?
All right, good evening. Thanks for letting me come back for a second meeting in a row. Want to give a quick update for the School Violence Prevention Program grant. Last time I was here, I spoke to you about the grant we received last year, December 2021. We were awarded $486,000. That required a local match of $162,000 over 3 years. We really focused on public safety communications, district communications, and then emergency response. We've already allocated or spent about 99% of that grant within less than a year. So these projects are almost complete. Made a lot of progress on this grant. Last Friday, we were very pleased to get the word that we were awarded this grant again for a second consecutive year. And we received $324,000 for this year. Actually, it's a 3-year grant. This requires a local match as well, 25%, and our portion of that's about $108,000. So what we're getting out of the grant this time is a security specialist position, so it's a full-time position to assist with the safety and security program. Very much needed as we continue to expand. When I started, there were 16 schools, now there's 20. This will allow us to meet the daily operational needs of the office, plus some of those long-term projects that unfortunately been set to the side. It's going to let us really pick up and run with those. So we're very, very excited about that. We expect to have that position filled by early November. So we're moving forward with that. Also, quite a bit of money for national state training for district-associated personnel, so that could be administrators, district office personnel, SROs, some of our security personnel, some national and state level trainings that we're going to be able to send folks through for the next 3 years. Training specifically for SROs. One course we're looking at is Adolescent Mental Health Development, which is sponsored by the National Association of School Resource Officers, and then the Advanced SRO course also is sponsored by NASRO. And another project we were working on is a Student Identification Card Pilot Program. And we got the money for 3 years to pay for the equipment plus the cards and some software management. So we're not looking at just ID cards that have a picture and name, but ID cards that would give us a lot of capabilities, that we could scan it for student accountability, to count for attendance. There's even advanced where we could scan it and send the parent. It would automatically send the parent a notification saying, hey, your child did something wonderful today, was recognized. There's so many options to how we can customize it. So we're going to spend the rest of this school year, kind of planning what that program is going to look like, and then we'll implement it next year in at least one school. And the funding will carry us through for 3 years as a pilot program, and then see from that point if we want to expand it to all the other schools. Before I move on real quick, I do want to recognize a student who helped with this program. And Ethan Lewis, if you don't mind standing, not to embarrass him. So I think most of you know Ethan. He's very involved at Nation Ford High School. He's a senior this year, involved in a lot of programs at Nation Ford. He came and spoke to you guys a couple months ago, last school year, and one of the recommendations or ideas he had was a student identification card. So I was asked to meet with Ethan. I was asked to meet with Ethan, and I told him, I said, you don't get to just come up and make a recommendation and walk away and expect us to do it. So I said, well, you take this on as a student-led initiative, and he was happy to do it. He interviewed security directors, 3 or 4 from across the state that have ID card programs in place. He did a lot of research on what's out there. So I want to thank Ethan again for your help with this. It means a lot to see you involved and see our students involved in these type of programs. So I greatly appreciate the work it was a pleasure working with you too. Nice, very nice young man. Very nice young man. Thanks, Ethan. I do want to point out too that we were one of 5 districts in South Carolina selected for the grant this year. There were 258 awards across the country, and it's open to any school district, local government, state government, county governments can apply for it. So we're very pleased again to get this 2 years in a row. 1 of 5 districts in South Carolina. We were the second highest award amount in the state. So since December of last year, this brings our total in the COPS grant program up to $810,000 in federal funds, requires $270,000 in local match. So we're looking at a little over $1 million in the last 12 months or less than 12 months that we now are able to apply to school safety initiatives that won't come out of the taxpayer's pocket here. This doesn't include the cameras and card readers, things we talked about before. These are initiatives beyond and above and beyond that. So we're extremely, extremely happy to get these grants. And if you'll excuse me, I know this isn't like the Academy Awards, so nobody run up here and slap me if I leave you out. But there are a lot of people that are involved in this program, and I do think it's only fair that I recognize those who really helped us, particularly with these grants. Ms. Lordo is extremely helpful with her just brilliant mind when it comes to financial matters, and she kind of and works with me to make sure we're on track with the budget that we're requesting, and it's something that's reasonable that we can present to the COPS office. Joe McLaughlin, Kim Mathis help us out with the purchase orders. They also keep track of all the financial information, the reimbursements from COPS office to make sure the district gets its reimbursement. Kelly Keniston and Procurement Department are extremely helpful in getting the awards out. And we have to issue an award for contractors or for vendors. My chain of command, so Ms. Young, Gray Young, Dr. Reps, extremely supportive of everything that we try to do in terms of safety and security. And I'll tell you, without those folks, this wouldn't work. If I didn't have their support, this wouldn't work. So I greatly appreciate their leadership and support. And finally, the board. This is my 5th year, starting my 5th year. Most of you were on the board when I started, and the leadership you provide, the support that you provide, the resources you make available for our safety and security program really goes a long way. And we try to make the best of that. And I just want to thank you guys for the support that you've given me and our program over the past 5 years.
You're too kind, because we know that you've put in the hours and the legwork to make a lot of this happen, which is why I'm extremely excited to see this full-time position on here, because I'm hoping you're looking for a clone or someone that is able to clone you, because in all seriousness, with as much as we've got going on, it's a key man risk, because you've got so much knowledge, and I'm excited to have somebody else that you can take under your wing. I wish Ethan was a little further along in his career, maybe.
Right?
Maybe he can learn
politics, not
fill in
security.
down the road, right?
Well, I did look for a clone, but Dwayne Johnson is unavailable. So any questions about the grant? Again, we're just excited about it. So
No, but if you're going to bring the rock in to, award it or something, just let us know. We'll be sure to be ready.
I just want to know what you're going to follow up with next week. Next meeting.
well, hopefully we can take a break for a while and kind of catch our breath. But we keep trying to move it forward. I appreciate y'all's support on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are in need of an executive session to discuss personnel recommendations, legal issues, and land contract issue. So thanks, everybody, for joining. I will entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Motion to go into executive session?
All right, thanks. Short and sweet.